They say music feeds the soul and food feeds the heart. So please join us for season 2 of Brunch with a Black Man, where we sit down with Black men from across the world who talk about their experiences with mental health, mental wellness, and how they are taking on their own mental health journey. We sit down over brunch to break it down. Make sure you join us for season 2 of Brunch with a Black Man. Welcome to another edition of Brunch with a Black Man. We are sitting here with Manny. Manny, how are you doing today?
I can't complain. I'm actually doing well. Happy to be here.
I'm happy that you are here. You know, it's been a long time coming. I really wanted to have you on the podcast. You know, I like it. I like finding people on their journeys and as they open up. But just like, start from the very beginning. What was it like growing up? Because you're from Homewood, correct?
Absolutely. It's something that I'm actually pretty proud of because most people who have had the journey that I've had will not necessarily represent where they come from. I'm actually a few generations from Homewood. So my grandmother's grandmother lived in Homewood. We were one of the first Black families in the neighborhood back when it was predominantly white. So that's something that I take pride in. And even though my mom was born there, she grew up in Philly. She moved back in the mid 80s and had the rest of her children. She had 3 children when she moved back. She had my brother in 86, had me in 89. And so Homewood has been, where my actual home is. That's why when I got a tattoo, I made sure to separate the 2 words, because that's where home is. I think we grew up very typical, Of course, Homewood, it wasn't always a low income, high crime community, but it has been since the 90s, So us growing up, we dealt with similar struggles as everybody else throughout the country. Of course, we were ravaged by the crack epidemic, Unfortunately, it hit even my family. My father was addicted to crack in the 80s and 90s, around the time of my conception. And so we dealt with, the normal struggles that a lot of 80s babies dealt with. Even though I'm born in 89, I still claim to be an 80s baby.
I'll say born in the 80s.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're growing up like in Homewood.
Yeah.
You have brothers. Like, who's like introducing you to the community? Who's introducing you to hip hop? Like, who was that person in your life at the time?
So it was a lot of my brothers. So I have 4 older brothers. I'm the youngest of 5. I think that's played an important role in my life because a lot of the lessons that I learned from my brothers. And of course, I learned from other influences in the community as well. But when I was super young, I remember going over to my aunt's house. She used to babysit me, and her man, who was my uncle, called him Uncle G. He gave me a lot of game. My brothers gave me a lot of game. There were a lot of people in the community kind of took me under the wing. I would be remiss if I didn't shout out my uncle James from the Afro-American Music Institute. Who gave me a lot of game, especially musically, but not necessarily with hip hop. As far as hip hop goes, my oldest brother, he'd been rapping since even before I was born. He was born in Philly, of course, moved here in the mid 80s, but he was a rapper. In fact, he used to record with Ime, even back in the day when Ime had a recording studio. And all of my brothers rapped, all of them. So very, very early on, hip hop was just a part of the culture. It was a part of the culture growing up. I think the reason why hip hop is so successful and the reason that we gravitated towards it is because it was the voice of our culture before there was social media, before people could just, talk about their experiences so freely and it have such a wide reach. That music was the way that people express themselves from coast to coast. And there's no difference here.
So your brothers are rappers. Do you remember the first hip hop song you heard where you were like, oh, this is my song. This song is speaking to me?
Yes. So I actually was thinking about this a little bit. The first hip hop song I remember hearing was "Today Was a Good Day" by Ice Cube. But I was very young. I was a toddler, and in Homewood, a lot of stuff happened. Another stark memory from that time period, believe it or not, was my older brother fucking me up because I'm the youngest. We used to fight all the time, and I would always lose until I got bigger than him. But the first hip hop song that I remember actually having an impact on me was Nas's "One Mic." That just spoke to me. By that time, I was probably a young teenager, I think it was. I think it was like 2002 when that came out. And I wasn't like super into music. I was just trying to figure out life. But when that song came out, it really spoke to me and it got me into Nas, of course, which got me into Eminem, a similar artist. And I feel like the two of them were kind of like my gateway to Tupac, you know what I'm saying, who is my ultimate favorite artist, you know what I mean, and who, you know, I think speaks to me and represents me as a person going through, you know, regular struggles, you know what I mean. So Nas is one, Mike, I gotta give it to him. Even to this day, like my favorite artists, Tupac, Nas, Big, you know what I'm saying, Scarface, Ice Cube, Eminem. I think people who are not just lyrically sound, you know what I'm saying, and proficient, but people who, you know, represent everyday real struggles that I relate to.
When you talk about everyday real struggles, you're a teenager, you know, in Homewood, you have older brothers. Like, what is your teenage experiences like? Because you said you really weren't into music at that time. Like, what were you into? Allegedly.
Take a sip.
Okay.
This is actually something else that I think about a lot. Because of my name, for those who don't know, Manny is an acronym. Muhammad Ali Nasir is my full name. And when most people hear that, they assume that I grew up in an Islamic household. And to a degree I did. Thank you. To a degree I did. But the dominant culture in the household, believe it or not, was gangsterism. You know what I mean? And I don't say that lightly. This is something that I thought about a lot at that time when I was a teenager. And I was really learning about life, but more so myself. I did a lot of studying, you know what I'm saying? And not just reading or like studying like external sources. I did a lot of studying of my family and my parents especially, you know what I'm saying? I thought of myself as a reproduction or product of my parents. So in order to better understand who I was, I needed to better understand them, you know what I'm saying? The more I learned about them, the more I learned why all of my brothers have been to jail and 3 of them have been in prison. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I've been to jail as well. It's because the dominant culture or the influence that we had, you know what I'm saying? And not just from the community, from the household itself, it was gangsterism, you know what I mean? So at that time, I wasn't really concerned about music, something that I considered to be entertainment. I was concerned about living life, you know what I mean? And even like actual gangsters, real gangsters, they don't consider themselves that. You know what I mean? They consider themselves sometimes businessmen or people who do what's necessary. You know what I mean? So even like when I'm talking about that, I mean people who were engaged in underground economy or people who had a particular code of ethics or way of living, you know what I'm saying, that governed them, that's outside of society's norms. You know what I mean? To this day. And you know, just serious. Ooh. Thank you. Appreciate you, Kel.
Thank you. Ooh.
I got you.
Perfect.
So Basiri X was one of my favorite artists. He has a song called Real Gangsters. And on the whole, it's just saying these are real gangsters, these are not real gangsters. And the comparison was politicians like Dick Cheney, like George Bush, compared to rappers like Gucci Mane or Young Jeezy. You know what I'm saying? Like the actual real gangsters are ones that are in positions of power, you know what I'm saying, and who impose their will upon other people on a large scale. You know what I mean? But anyways, at that time, I was thinking about survival. Of course, we were very, very poor. I wasn't in Homewood the entire time. We moved around a lot because of financial instability. We ended up losing a house in Homewood, which is why we had to move. And we bounced around. A lot of times we were like couch to couch, which now I understand as homelessness. You know what I'm saying? I didn't comprehend it as that back then. You know what I mean? And you know, I was worrying about survival. So I think I hopped off the porch around that time, 12, 13. And I did what I had to do, following in the footsteps of some of the people in the household who taught me. You know what I mean? My older brothers and my parents, to be honest. Yeah, so music was always secondary.
So music being secondary and you're jumping off the porch, you're a young kid, you thought you had a similarly normal You know,
Good.
right?
Okay, I'm sorry.
It is good. Don't eat. That's what we're here for. You think you're having a similar normal background. Your family's in crisis. You get evicted. Your father has like addiction disorder. How are you processing like all of these rapid changes while also like trying to study your family, figure out who you are, while also trying to provide to make sure you have some stability in your life?
Well, to be honest, I've never really thought about me processing it. Tupac, of course, is my favorite artist, has a lot of the song. It says, when I was coming up rough, that wasn't even what you called it. That's why I smoke blunts now and run with alcoholics. You know what I mean? And the reason you didn't call it that is because you just called it life. If you didn't understand or if you wasn't aware of any alternative, that's just the way it is. You know what I mean? Like even now, I think that kind of informs, or it did inform my activism in a way because, you know, when I looked at police brutality, I looked at it as a normal part of existence as a black man in America. You know what I'm saying? I didn't really think about it as something that was wrong, that shouldn't happen the way that it does. You know what I mean? So family being in crisis, if my homie down the street is in crisis as well, I don't see it as a crisis. I just see it as life. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I always saw it. We were just living life. But now, of course, that I'm older, I have more experiences, I've met more people, I understand not everybody had that same experience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I remember like there's like a cartoon that was like, it was like a meme. It was like you tell somebody a story and they just like look at you mouth open. And you were like, oh, not everybody grew up like this. Like
Right.
this is like different. And so you're going through things. I know you wrote a really amazing op-ed about, you know, not amazing for your experience, but a really poignant op-ed about your time going through the juvenile justice system here. When you reflect back on that time, do you now like understand that like that was a crisis and like that was a traumatic experience, or do you still view that as like this was just a part of the normal experience at that time?
I do recognize it as a crisis, as something that was abnormal, and the reason why may be slightly different than what you implied in your question. It's because I'm the youngest, right? Before I got involved in the legal system, all of my brothers were already involved, right? But they were involved through Schumann, juvenile detention facilities, Vision Quest, the CIS program, the Option Center, you know what I'm saying, house arrest. So when it was my turn, that's what I was expecting. You know what I'm saying? The first time I got involved, believe it or not, the very first time I got involved, I had to be like 14. Of course, we moved around a lot, like I already said. I was using somebody else's address to go to this predominantly white school called Carleton. And this guy randomly in the cafeteria just approached me on some racist stuff. So I put hands on him, and somebody else got involved, an adult. I put hands on him too. That adult turned out to be the principal. I didn't know at the time. So that was my very first case, and I didn't get arrested for that, so I don't typically count it. The first time I got arrested at 16, charged with armed robbery, I assumed when I was in a cop car, I was going to Schumann, you know what I'm saying? Because that's where everybody went when you were under 18. I didn't. I went to the county, you know what I mean? And that, more than a lot of other experiences, and I'm talking about people trying to kill me, cops investigating me for homicide, saying I'm never getting out of jail, people turning on me, random stuff. Out of all of my experiences that could be considered traumatic, that was the one that I think that had the most impact on me, because I was put into an adult situation and I had no choice but to adapt to it. You know what I mean? So the day that I got out of jail, still at 16, the day after I got out of jail, I went to work. You know what I'm saying? I went to work with adults. I think that experience in the county ended my childhood. You know what I'm saying? And I think because of that, and now I understand that of course, my brain was underdeveloped as a 16-year-old, but it's not even fully developed until 25, 26. Because of that, I recognize it as something that was traumatic or impactful, you know what I'm saying? But it's something that I've talked about a lot, something that I've never shied away from. The thoughts, the feelings, the experiences of it is not something that I ever try to suppress. And I think that it really informs a lot of the work that I do now, you know what I mean? So, you know, for what it's worth, I appreciate the experience that I have.
You talk about like adapting. Was that the time where you learned how to basically like shut down your emotions? Because you had talked about before of like not understanding people being emotional, not understanding people crying, not understanding people trying to like care. Like, was that the part where you were like, you know what, emotions don't get you anywhere as an adult. You gotta just like adapt and move on and live your life.
Believe it or not, that makes sense. But no, I think I learned that before. So, you know, I have 4 other brothers. I had a father. So I had a father who was present, even though he wasn't in the house. So I grew up around men, you know what I mean? A lot of testosterone. So I learned to suppress emotions very, very early on. I say around the time I hopped off the porch, 12, 13, when I started spending more time in the street than at home, is what I mean by like hopping off the porch, engaging in criminal activity. That is when I learned emotions were kind of like unbecoming to men, you know what I'm saying, or people who were inspiring to be men. In fact, my father, I will never forget this. Anytime I would cry in his presence, he would punch me and say, shut up, stop crying, no F words in his family. You know what I mean? So even like expressing emotion, even when I was sad or physically hurt, you know what I'm saying, it was regarded as something that was weak and unacceptable, you know what I mean? And I'm becoming of men and manhood, you know what I'm saying? Now I recognize that as something that is not really cool.
We got our mamas. Thank you.
Oh, this looks good.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Okay. So now you recognize it's not.
Yeah, I know that's not cool because, you know, if you're suppressing everything, then you're not going through the process, and sometimes you're not dealing with the actual causes of the emotions. You know what I mean? But you know, that's kind of how it came up. So even by the time I went to jail, I was already, and I hate to use this word, I typically don't. I was already kind of hardened. You know what I'm saying? And I'll never forget when I got out. I had a conversation with my mom, and she was like looking at me real standoffish, very weird. And she said, "You haven't snapped yet. I'm waiting for you to snap." I said, "I'm not going to," and I never did. I never did. I recognized jail, incarceration as a part of the Black experience. And I still do, unfortunately. Second time I went to jail, it was a little, I was still getting used to it. But the third time I was chilling.
Like, okay, this is normal.
The fourth time I got arrested with other people during a protest, and the other people that I was with, it was like the first time being in jail, and they could not believe that I was just calm. Like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Yeah. Well, you'll be all right.
So you talk a lot about your criminal experience. For the first 3, you had jumped off the porch, you were in the community, you know, getting a street education. Mm-hmm. When you get arrested at the protest, you're actually not doing anything wrong.
Right.
You're like swept up. So like, what was that like psychologically to actually be, as a Black man who kind of took these steps to change and improve your life, to learn a trade, to be a part of the community, to give back, and then you find yourself in the same cycle of oppression when you're literally just trying, just like live your life and do right by the the rules?
I think at that point, I began to like educate myself a little bit more about history and political history specifically. So I went to that protest prepared to get arrested or to get killed. I really had a mindset or a mind state of where I'm not going home tonight. You know what I'm saying? And I understood that. And I went there because I believed in what we were fighting for. And this is a George Floyd protest. And George Floyd got choked to death, right? Or something, whatever. And I had been choked by police. You know what I mean? So that death specifically spoke to me because I know what that feels like. You know what I'm saying? And so there was no way that I wasn't going to go. And the previous mayor, put up that, bullshit ass curfew. And me and a lot of other people said, fuck that. You know what I'm saying? We out here for a specific purpose, for a specific reason. And I'll never forget, Farouk actually called me. He was like, yo, bro, just told me to be careful. There's a bunch of cops out there, you know what I'm saying? Be careful. I said, I got you, And I showed up, I met with my people. First thing I said was, I got bail money. The first thing I said. And, I was prepared not to go home. And we did. And of course, by that time, I was already involved with the bail fund. I already established Jailbreak, which was the aftercare support organization. So there were already some things in place that weren't in place when I was getting in trouble before. And there was actually a 10-year period between me getting arrested for criminal activity or alleged criminal activity and me getting arrested for social justice activism. You know what I'm saying? And that was the arrest that I walked into willingly. That was the one that I was happy to be a part of, happy to do, because of the ultimate purpose. You know what I'm saying? And they didn't treat us right then. They didn't treat me right or treat us right before. You know what I'm saying? I think even my experience said, oh, you know what? This is something else I wanted to say. My fault. I was going to talk a little bit about the experience of the arrest, in jail. But the way that they arrested us was so disproportionate to the actual charges we received. Now, Pete, I've been arrested before for armed robberies, attempted homicides, possession of, multiple things. And the response from the people who arrested me for disorderly conduct and failure to disperse was so disproportionate compared to my other arrests. It was fucking crazy. You know what I'm saying? The way that the state, the police, local government responded to people fighting for social justice. You know what I'm saying? It really made me want to go harder. And I did. Going to protest, of course, that's where I met you at.
We be outside sometimes.
No, or organizing, against social injustice. You know what I'm saying? I think it was extremely impactful. That was probably my second most impactful arrest. You know what I'm saying? Because of what it is. And I think that also speaks to the way that I'm kind of living now. You know what I'm saying? The way that I was off the porch in the streets in a way that was somewhat destructive to my community. I'm out there in the streets right now in a way that I think is constructive, productive for the community. You know what I'm saying? But I'm still out there.
Yeah, it's not, you're still being out there. And you're still, navigating a lot. You talk about the 10-year period between the time, you were arrested criminally to you're arrested for civil disobedience, and that time, you started a trade. So you got your certifications, working hard. You started, doing the jailbreak, the aftercare support, and basically trying to ensure that when people got out, they were okay. They weren't being let out at night. They had food, they had some money to get where they were going, even in smoke. So you were already building. And then you get elected to the Jail Oversight Board, and you're dealing with people who won't say your name correctly, who disrespect you, and throw your past in your face all the time. How are you able to maintain and still keep eyes on the prize of being there for your community, when either now as a, we would say a reformed, a reformed person, like you're still dealing with that racism, that anti-Blackness?
I think ultimately I'm in a constant state of like self-reflection. You know what I mean? I'm always thinking about how I'm moving, how I'm impacting people. You know what I'm saying? One of the most powerful quotes I think that I've memorized, that I've learned, is people will forget what you said, they won't forget how you make them feel. So I think about how I'm making people feel, you know what I mean? And I understand that I'm on the Jail Oversight Board to represent our people. And when I say our people, I mean people who are incarcerated, formerly incarcerated, people who are going through it even if they're in alternative housing, the renewal, or house arrest. And nobody else on that board, with the exception of Bethany, is there to really represent them. You know what I'm saying? And even Bethany, who puts in work and who has a very similar experience, doesn't come from the same place that I come from. Right? The majority of the people in the county look like me. You know what I'm saying? And I think about that every time I'm doing anything around the jail, around the legal system in general. You know what I'm saying? If there is not somebody who reflects the majority of the people who are in there that they're specifically talking about or serving, you know what I mean? Then my voice is valid in that space. You know what I mean? That's something that I think about. And I don't mind receiving a racism from the other members of the board, especially the judges, because the people who witness that understand that that's the way they are in their courtrooms. They're part of the reason why the majority of the people there look like me. They come to their cases with these biases, the same biases that they come to the board meeting with me with. You know what I mean? And so I understand it. And I think more importantly, the people who are witnessing it understand it as well. You know what I'm saying? And that's enough for me. I can deal with racism. I've been dealing with it my entire life. I mean, even to the point where I've been spat on. You know what I'm saying? People who were dropped. They wasn't there doing it. They were there. I've been, people have called me nigger as they drive away. You know what I'm saying? Cops have beat me up. You know what I mean? I've dealt with racism. I can deal with, a judge being a bitch. I'm sorry.
What is that? But you can deal with a judge coming at you.
Yeah, especially when that judge is not making a decision that's going to impact me for potentially the rest of my life. When you're facing judges, or when people like me are facing judges, most of the time, they have the other person's life in their hands.
Yeah,
and that's not the case for me. So I'm there to represent the people in that, and I think I do. So.
Yeah, I think you try to represent the people well, talking about your story, being like very transparent, but also having a community of elders who've been impacted, working around you, lifting them up and supporting. And I know two things that are really important to you now, is your music and also your Second Amendment. I know you have found like comfort not only in letting people know that it's okay to defend themselves, but also sharing that information and resources, particularly with like women and queer folks. So why is it so important for you to make sure that people know that they're able to defend themselves?
I think that's one of like the fundamental principles of America itself. You know what I'm saying? But funny enough, the Second Amendment doesn't just say, it doesn't like give you the right to bear arms and defend yourself. It says the government doesn't have the right to take it away. That's really what it says. I think the right to defend yourself as a fundamental human right. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, when they think about civil rights or social justice movements, they think about the civil rights movement. And most of it is centered around this faction of people who believed in nonviolence. You know what I mean? Of course, MLK. But there were a lot of people who don't get the same publicity or recognition. There were a lot of people who were not nonviolent. You know what I mean? There were whole books written about it. We Will Shoot Back. is one of them. American on Fire is another one. There's always been violent armed resistance to white supremacy and social injustice. You know what I mean? And I don't advocate for, what do you call it? I don't advocate for like being an aggressor. You know what I mean? Or I actually don't even advocate for illegal gun possession. You know what I mean? I advocate for legal gun ownership, working within the laws of a particular state or commonwealth, and defending yourself against those who, unfortunately, sometimes don't think you have the right to exist. You know what I'm saying? I think more than that, it goes to like a fundamental principle of how some people like see themselves or like choose to live, especially in terms of violence. Most people who are anti-gun only see guns as tools of violence. And I understand that perspective, right? But me, as Manny, I'm saying to you, if I did not have the capacity for violence, I would not be alive. You know what I mean? I would not. I had a run-in with some Proud Boys in 2020, and it was 15 of them. The reason I know there was 15 of them is because as I'm getting into it with one of the guys, another one says, "There's 15 of us. What are you going to do?" Well, guess what? I have 15 bullets in my gun. I don't need 15 people with me. You know what I'm saying? They ended up calling the cops on me. Well, what if I didn't have it? What would have happened? You know what I mean? What would have happened? You know, anything. You never know. The world may never know.
The world may never know. But as you're here, you're like tapping into your soul, your heart, your emotions. What is like on the horizon for you? What are you looking forward to in the future?
I look forward to continued collaboration and growth. When I first got involved in like the social justice movement, I was unaware of like all of the beefs and vendettas. A lot of it I consider to be petty and to this day, but since becoming involved myself, I've gotten involved in some of the beefs. You know what I mean? And they only seek to like divide us. You know what I mean? And I think ultimately, if we're not united with common causes, pooling our resources, working together, we're going to be out-organized and outmatched against our enemy. Most of us have like common enemies or working towards common goals. I look forward to reconciliation, squashing a lot of the beefs that we have, and growing more as a community. So, if you don't mind, I want to talk a little bit about Crip.
Okay.
Like even like why I have,
Go ahead.
the C on my jacket. And when people ask me, what does the C stand for? I always say community, and it does. Even like Crip itself is an acronym: Community, Revolution, and Progress. It wasn't always for historians who may be listening, but that's what it means now. You know what I mean? And what I've been trying to do, and what I think One Hood does as well, by it being, the number one, is expand our idea of what community is. You know what I mean? Where I come from, Homewood, in the 90s, anybody who was in Homewood was united. Now that's different. It used to be different sides, uptown, downtown, Homewood South, Homewood North. I'm from Homewood South. Disunited around that, you know what I'm saying? Now it's even more about streets, particular streets. And it's not just here in Pittsburgh, it's everywhere, it's nationwide. And it's not just in street organizations, it's with everything, even like with politics. Even if you're a Democrat, well, what type of Democrat are you? Are you more to the right or are you more to the left? You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of division and dysfunction. And I think what I try to do is, I wanted to say overlook, not necessarily overlook, because I think, some of the issues that people have are valid. What I try to do is get to the core of what people are involved for in the first place. You know what I mean? And some of the petty things, some of the smaller things, maybe we can overlook, or maybe we can address head on and get to the bottom of it, so that we can collaborate and move forward and be successful together. You know what I mean? That's something that I think about a lot. And that's actually what I intended to do when I first got involved. I thought a lot of the stuff was petty, was dumb, especially coming from a place where the beef that I had was physical violence. I actually had this conversation a lot with the Bucket Bell Fund when they were talking about nonprofit beef. I said, well, nobody's trying to kill you. It's not real beef. And they didn't really understand that perspective. And I still have that. Yeah, I understand people standing on their principles and wanting to go in a particular direction. But I think what I look forward to is continued collaboration and growth.
Well, Manny, we wish continued collaboration and growth for you.
Oh, is that
It is.
Oh.
We did it. See?
Why are you talking about having to shit on?
See, now we got another episode. See, another episode is coming. But I am Miracle Jones, and that has been Brunch with the Black Man with me.